Hello, I'm Bakhtygul Makhanbetova, an international literary agent from Kazakhstan. I'm going to talk about preserving humanity through national values of the Kazakh people. The year 2020 presented citizens of Kazakhstan two important dates to celebrate: 1150th anniversary of Al-Farabi and the 175th anniversary of Abai. The concept of national values of any nation based on certain creators' great thoughts. I'd like to accent on the feelings by Roland Sisimbayev, a popular writer who opened Abai House in London and founded International Abai Club. The highest spiritual value of the works of Abai is the concept of free personality, a fight against social evil and the inhumanity. The same understanding is characteristic of many great creators: Shakespeare, Goethe, Byron, Pushkin, Lermontov, and Rabindranath Tagore. If Abai is more available to the world at the beginning of the 21st century, here we must note the big efforts of Roland Sisimbayev. Recently, I have read a perfect research book by one of the main Abaiologists. It is full of awesome details that let you accept Abai easily with the right keys to his philosophy. It is great to take into consideration the facts from the research work of the Professor Bekemtaz Murzaahmet, Doctrine of Abai, the Holistic Man. Who is Abai? This question has a very complete answer in this work. Owing to the list of the serious resources of his work, you make sure that the Kazakh people are the representatives of the old Turkic culture. We are descendants of the Sags. From Herodot's saying, the world history tells us about the Skiffs' monotheistic nature before the holy religions appear in the history. Therefore, their ancestors from the early history period believed in the great power. So said, they mentioned the old history of the Turkic humanistic portrait of a perfect man, Camille Insoni, based on the 6 doctrines. First, it is connected with the name of Alper Tonga by Turkish or Afrasiab by Persian, the 7th century BC, and his Ahi or generosity doctrine. Then comes Al-Farabi's intellectual man doctrine, 10th century, based on his kind city dwellers, 12 best features of a state ruler. Third, Joseph Balasagoni's generosity doctrine, the 11th century, based on Kutat Gubilik with 4 heroes, dialogues, fair, wisdom, wealth, and the kindness that show us a model of having good features in one person. Fourth, Qo'sha Ahmet Yassaui's Divan-i-Hikmet, Book of Wisdom, the 12th and the 13th centuries, based on Laduni science as Hal Ilime, that is open for a certain group of strong intellectual people, as they are called Sufis, to understand the importance of the spiritual treasure that lets you get closer to the Creator. Fifth, in the 19th and the 20th centuries appeared holistic man doctrine by Abai that opens unique features of a human like hot efforts, radiant mind, and warm heart that based on the main loves to God, humanity, and justice. 6. Science of Conscience by Shakerim, the beginning of the 20th century, proves that consciousness, justice, and kindness in a man form conscience. It is the food of the spirit. If you lead by radiant mind, your heart does not darken and harden. Cold-minded people never think of the future of the world's safety, as they know well only destroying ways of the humanity and the earth. So said, people of the nation must be born to follow the ideas beginning with Alper Tonga and ending with Shakarim's. They need to tell the world about the importance of the 6 doctrines of the Turkic world that can be a perfect model of the humanism in the world. The specific peculiarity of the existence of the Turkic nation, based on strong doctrines followed systematically one by one. Bekemtaz Murzaahmet finds out the more developed last 2 ones are the best doctrines perfectly suit the concept of the great consciousness discovered by quantum physicists in present days. It is important to say, Mukhtar Awezov is the first researcher of Abai, the writer's novel epic, The Passes of Abai. translated into more than 130 languages, opened the world the features of a great Kazakh poet, writer, philosopher, enlightener, translator, composer, and reformer Abai Kunanbayev. The most important researcher who did a lot to open the treasures of Al-Farabi to the world is Professor Aghjan Al-Mashani. The biggest scientist, geologist, and writer, Aghjan Al-Mashani, contributed properly into the researching world as #1 Farabiologist. He is the author of the first historic novel Al-Farabi, and he left a very valuable research work, Al-Farabi and Abai. In fiction, we can also name a classical writer, Anwar Alimjanov, the author of the novel The Return of a Teacher about Al-Farabi. Therefore, I am very happy to keep on stressing out further great feelings from the poetry world of the popular Kazakh poet Mukhtar Shakhanov. I would like to accent on the main idea of his poem about 4 mothers. Every man has 4 mothers except the one who gives a birth to him. The homeland, your native place, is your region and your glory. The mother tongue, your native language, is the treasure you cannot sell. Native customs and the traditions keep your generation safe and blessed. Your native history, though it is full of pages of tragedy and the bitter truth, helps to maintain the national code. If you are unable to care about the mother who gives you a birth, then you are unable to value 4 others. Perfectly said. I hope you will agree with the poet. However, the number of mankurts and koskamans, people without 4 mothers, is being increased everywhere. It is a horrible fact because of the past policy of having one Soviet nation in the USSR. More than 100 nations lost their national identity, spiritual values, national traditions, and stopped existence by the collapse of the empire. We know some writers felt its consequences and they tried to warn the public even during the Soviet period. The novel Kişi by Abishki Kilbayev, written in the 60s of the 20th century, presented the history of the mankurts. Spiritual mankurts or koskamans appeared in the 80s. In the novel The Storm Station by Shingis Aitmatov showed us more developed mankurts. Awesome phenomena. Academician Rahman Kolbirdbay defines mankurts are people who have lost their roots and koskamans enemies who intentionally attack on the independence of a nation. Professor Dandayskak features ambitious mankurts subjected to violence and torture by the hands of the enemy. They are not as horrible as another type of mankurts. If I mention a novel myth by Oralkhan Bukey, it is the portrait of the almost lost nation of the totalitarian system. He tells readers how the spiritual weakened humans try to cope with the meaningless lives and how the society members become less responsible and crueler during the period of globalization by the examples of bees in his work. Brilliant works connected with natural cultural value by Akseliu Sidinbek is a unique contribution into the Kazakh culture treasure. The Kazakh mythologies, properly identified in the research works of a great scientist, Serk Bolkhondbay, and all his books keep specific Turkish distinctions and the detailed study of the cultural themes. The period of Kazakh history from the 15th century to the middle of the 19th century is full of tragic events. During the Soviet period, the first Kazakh writer presented it strongly in the trilogy The Nomads. It was Ilyas Isinberlin. The steppe where Abai was born became the territory of nuclear weapon testing during the Soviet period, and that took hundreds of people's lives. A well-known classical writer, Mediev Sarzekeh, is a living witness describing all those horrible events in his documentary novel. The remarkable author, Rahimjan Otarbayev, tried to open the eyes of the people to the true pages of the Kazakh history. He paid a big respect to the national heroes who sacrificed their lives for the sake of the nation in his works. The years of independence in Kazakhstan made a group of intellectual people think hard about the future of the country. Professor Razal Sabdin, by studying Abai and the other great figures, suggests one essential idea that can change the situations in the whole world. He defines the steps of the programs in his book about Abai, future of Kazakhstan and world civilization, and points to the solutions of these issues based on his own points of views. The question mark is a long poem, consists of big 9 parts. It appeared during the first months of the pandemic period by a talented poet, Ghalim Jailibay. Mankind is facing the end times, says the author. Man, who has risen to the heights of civilization and reached the limit of the scientific and technological progress, who has lost his human nature, found in the 4 books of heaven, who has turned out as a social animal, is now wondering how he will answer these questions. A man's life is full of achievements and successes, while he does make many mistakes and commit many sins in his life to cope with his deeds. Juan Doktuminbay presents natural portraits of his heroes in his works with a sarcasm and humor. You can see mostly in human behavior of his heroes the society stays without any national ideology. Solidushan tells us about the life story of a brave woman who could overcome all her life difficulties as the victim of Semipalatinsk nuclear weapon tests, a survivor of the first independent state period, and a winner of her fate. Turgun Joldaspekqızı, a young writer, leads you to understand the importance of your life as a human. She describes her own struggles with her incurable disease. You'll be pleased with her mastering how well she could create her disease as a life hero in her novel. From the history, we know that great Abai introduced his own poetry and the masterpieces of the Russian and European authors through his melodies and the translation, even in the 19th century. Nowadays, we are proud of one promising young pop star, Dimash Kudaibergen, has made the world learn the Kazakh language through his songs recently. Owing to the history of the influence by Soviet Russia, we distinguish the Kazakh society as Kazakh-speaking and Russian-speaking. Former Russian-speaking Kazakh Kanat Tasbekov has prepared a unique program based on situational Kazakh. Hundreds of people improve their speaking skills by attending his weekly language clubs. I would like to mention the initiative platform of the Foliant Publishing House that has been functioning as the organizer of the International Book Fair in Nur-Sultan since 2016. Some such things, if I mention, it may show a picture slightly in the country. I do not think keeping the position of the Kazakh translator is the solution of the governing structure and the business. Another issue was the change of Cyrillic to Latin to form a new Kazakh alphabet that has been lasting for 25 years of discussions. The number of publishing houses is high, and the activities mostly depend on the tenders and state purchases. Only a few authors are pleased with the fact that their books published and sent to the libraries. Not all writers get royalties. At the same time, buyers do not find their favorite books in the bookshops. The solution I can see here only to reform the mechanism that starts to work out those drawbacks. Everyone get knowledge first, with the assistance of the mentors to choose the best way to live and work with the baggage gathered by a certain experience. However, hundreds of professionals let people make their earnings and share their knowledge. The main gift from God I received by choosing a profession of the teacher. Among all professions, why the main respect presented to teachers? I consider teaching learners is a single way God may forgive your wrong behavior. 30 years of teaching experience could have let me share all possible essential ideas connected with languages, of course, literature, thus based on cultural values of every nation. Owing to my big baggage of teaching years, I used the classes as a platform for creative and critical thoughts. In conclusion, I would like to say that all we need to care about is to value our human features and behave like humans when our hearts beat thanks to God. It is an honor for me to share these thoughts here. Thank you, the organizers of TEDxLambeth 2020, for letting me be one of you. Thank you for your attention.